I know, right? Let me make sure this live stream starts running here. Let's see here.
I've been working with Dapper lately, so I'll.
Okay, let's see here. Let me copy that and I will paste that over. Got it. Paste that over on. Put out another link here. Let's see. Bear with me here. Code black. New link. Complete. Okay, there we go.
Like you're a doctor or something, and you're sure like you came from surgery or something.
I've had these scrubs for a long time, man. They just nice and comfortable. So I'm like, they just nice and easy. So, all right. So we are actually, I believe, live now on YouTube. So I'm gonna go ahead and say hello to everyone. Hopefully everybody's doing well. As always, it's Alex, and hopefully you will learn something from this. Giving a shout out, obviously, to the Code Black community. Go over on Facebook, check them out, like, share, subscribe, get invited, get the lowdown on all of that. You can subscribe to my channel, which you're watching already. I have my cooking channel over there on the side, the Schooler's Delight as well. Mike, you got any channels that you want to prop out there or anything you want to prop out there?
I got my fishing channel. You can go to bigmuddyfishing.com. There's a link to it. That's Big Muddy, like in mud, bigmuddyfishing.com. Also profitdreamer.com. That'll take you to my YouTube channel too. And you can search for those on YouTube. This is about you. I've come to learn Dapper.
Well, like I said, you're using Dapper slightly different than I do. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So anything that you see that I'm doing kind of odd or anything like that, stop me. We're here to work together. It's not about me, it's about everyone. So
I have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
Are you using any framework?
You got jokes. You got jokes. You got jokes. No, sir. No,
all right,
sir.
Then you're already ahead of the curve.
No entity framework here today. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. So let's go ahead there and I'll share that. And let me go ahead and minimize that. So what I decided to do, and as always, I'm using specific tools for this particular lesson. The two main tools that I'm using are Visual Studio Community 2019, and I'm using SQL Server Management Studio. I think 2016 is it? It's 2016? I think it is. It's the latest one, or they might have another one out, but I think I'm using 2016 or something like that. So I can't remember which one it is, but the server I think is a 2016 server. But it'll run just about anything out there. So, but what is an ORM? And we're going to talk about that a little bit, and then we're going to talk about Dapper. And I've got this nice little drawing here. So before I show the drawing, Dapper is an object relational management tool. And if you look at previous videos that I've made on SQL, you'll know that you have RDBMSs, which is relational database management systems. You've got SQL, which is how you query and you talk to your SQL database by using queries and statements and all that good stuff, keywords. And then, so that's your data layer, right? Kind of in a nutshell. But you have an application layer as well, and that's what we'll call middleware or your web layer. You have an interaction or an application layer, And then you have UI UX layer, which is user interface, your user experience layer. That's what my man Mike here is a pro at right there. So,
All right.
hey, I'm throwing props, baby.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is, let's say you want to get data from your database into your application. How do you do that? Well, there's a multitude of different ways to do it. You can use Mike's favorite entity framework, or you can use a tool that's been around for a very long time, which is ADO.net, or you can use any of the other ORM tools. And what an ORM does is it basically is a middle ground between your application and your database. Okay. And so what will happen is you will establish a database structure in some way, shape, or form. There's multitude of ways that you can do that. You can have code first, which I believe is where you would write the code in the application layer and build your database on the fly. That's what Entity Framework does in a nutshell. And then you also have database first. And there's some other ones out there where you have a database and then you build your database first, all the stored procedures, everything else, triggers, anything that you would want, and you would bring that information over to your data into your application, and you would build your application based on how your database works. I'd say, and correct me if I'm wrong, or give me your thoughts on this, Mike. I'd say maybe 70-75% of development is usually database first. Would you agree with that?
You're saying, yeah. I mean, well, you're saying 70% of the code for the database?
No, not so much that. The more like the steps that people use. I'd say would you say maybe more people go database first versus code
Oh,
first, right?
yeah. I would say it's more database first. Usually the database is sort of there. Then they want to put some code on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Dapper really could help you too.
Yeah.
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 It's very rare that you come on a project and everything is brand new and you get to the database.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm going to show this little picture, and I am I'm always about giving other people props. So this article has actually been out there for quite a while, and I'm not going to get too much into the article, but I wanted to show the picture that he has here, and my doggone Zoom is blocking my stuff up there. Don't you hate that?
There's a way that you can hide it. There's a little,
Yeah.
I hate that too.
Yeah. And let me see if I can minimize that.
There's some drop
Oh, there it
down.
is.
Yeah.
Hide control panel, hide
There it
video
is.
panel. There we go. Okay, so actually, I want to show the video panel. I want to hide the control panel. Hide. There we go. There we go. Okay, so the picture I wanted to show everybody was this first picture, and this kind of goes into what I was saying earlier. So you have your application software, and tonight what we're going to do is we're going to build in our application software. Our application software is going to be C#, and you have your database, and so that's just a regular Microsoft SQL Server database. And in the middle, you've got this little thing in here, and they've got that bad word in there. That's not my drawing. It's not my drawing. They got this middle layer here called an ORM layer, and they have Dapper / entity framework. Okay, and so if we come down a little bit further, we actually see a form of a database, very simple. Student, you have ID, you have name, you have marks or their grades that they got. You have your application over here, which in this instance, if we kind of zoom in a little bit here, it's kind of blurry, I think, but this is the model in the application layer, which maps back to your database. So if you look over here, you have an int ID, and that's this first ID column. You have your string name, which is this name column in your database, and you have this int marks, which is the marks column. So anytime you're going to interact with a database through an ORM, whether it be ADO.net, Entity Framework, Dapper, or whatever, you're going to create a data model, which is going to, when you grab the information, it's going to store information in your application so that you can interact with it inside of the application software. Okay. So then in the middle is the ORM layer, which is Dapper. And all it does is it messes around with what we call CRUD operations. That's create, write, update, and delete. And that's just very simple: select statements, insert updates and deletes in a database. And so what you do is you map your application to the database, and you use the ORM for the communication part of it. Okay. Any corrections to what I'm saying so far there?
No,
Mike?
you're correct.
Okay.
Only thing I didn't like about that slide, if you scroll up a bit, it says entity framework there. Can you cross that out? Like,
Yeah, I know, right? I wish I
yeah.
could. I wish I could. If you can't tell, me and Mike are not big fans of entity framework. So, and I'll tell you a little bit about that a little later. I'm not knocking entity framework.
I am.
Like I say, he gonna knock entity framework. I'm not gonna knock entity framework because it has its uses, and a lot of people use it. I just feel that it's extremely overly complex unnecessarily. And the goal of any software developer or engineer or even DBA is to make the job as easy as possible. It shouldn't be overly complex to do your job.
So
Right?
can I say one thing?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I have to be careful because I do use entity framework at work.
Mm-hmm.
And so my boss might say, hey, why are you putting out a video saying entity framework sucks, right?
Well, you never said that.
Well, okay, entity framework sucks. But I will say this. It does have its use, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my problem with entity framework is it tries to dictate what my schema should be. And if you already had your schema designed, trying to make any framework work with it is just cumbersome.
Okay, so
Yeah.
for those that aren't devs and DBAs, explain to everybody what a schema is in plain terms.
Okay, so you had a schema up there, a small schema where it had the student, not the student. You know, that's a row of tables, but that database has a table on it that has those 3 columns in it. That kind of builds up your schema. And so there might be, and this isn't very normalized because marks would be in another table because you'd have class. The student would have a class.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you were in a class, not a C# class, and there'd be a professor. That would be your schema. It defines your database. That ID, that name, that mark is names and columns. That's part of your schema.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So basically just the form of your tables in your database, right?
Yeah.
There's other uses for schemas, at least as far as SQL Server. So you can use schema also for security purposes.
Yep.
You can also use schema to segregate your data by schema. So like you can have like Mike was just talking, you can have a grade schema, you can have a student schema. You know, they're all still a part of the same database, but you use the schema to just organize your data differently, right? So let me go back to what we were kind of talking about here. So we have, like I said, we have a different number of ORMs that we can use. You can use Dapper. You can use Entity Framework.
Maybe there's an auto mapper. I don't know what auto mapper be considered. There probably is an auto mapper for this.
I think so. The only ones that I've ever used are ADO.NET, Entity Framework, Dapper. I think that's all I've ever used. So those are kind of the common ones.
I would even say all of them behind the scenes probably use ADO.NET, but
I know Dapper is built, and it says it right here on their webpage, right? So we're gonna go. We've gone to the webpage, and so it talks about what Dapper is, and all it does is it does use ADO.NET in some way, shape, or form to map data from your database to your .NET solution, and it's a 3-step process. You create a connection to your database. You write a query, and then you pass that query to the database using Dapper and a bunch of different C# methods and stuff that it uses. And you get data back if you do it the right way. Right?
Yeah, and there are some extensions that even make that easier, but that's a whole nother video.
It is. It is. So what we're going to do right now is, and it's really easy to install Dapper. Now, there are some requirements before you get too far down the road here. Number one is you do have to know some C#. Number two, at least for this tutorial. Number two, you do have to have some familiarity with SQL. And then number three, you have to be able to run Visual Studio for this particular tutorial, because that's what I'm running for this.
And you need a database.
And yep, and you need a database.
Yeah.
Yep. And so over here, and before I get too far down the road, everything that we're going to use today is you can go download it free of charge. There's a little sketchiness with the databases, but thankfully Visual Studio comes with a compact version of a SQL database that you can use. So you can use that too. But over here, I have actually a 2016 version, might be 2019 version of a SQL Server database here. And SQL Server, I should say. And in this SQL Server, I've got these number of databases here. You see the AfroCon database, props to House of Afros, Capes, and Curls. A couple of test ones, Bike Stores and Chinook are ones that I think Microsoft came up with if you want to use it for test purposes. I've got a couple of created ones here that I have. And then the Stack Overflow one is huge. I think I downloaded this via a torrent and some other stuff. And this Pubs one is as well. So we're going to use the Chinook database here today, because I know it's got a plenty of data in it. And the Chinook database is just a bunch of tables. Oh, that's the wrong one. A bunch of tables that are for like a record company. You can download a copy of this database off of their GitHub account, their GitHub page. That's wrong with my camera here. So I won't get too far into that. So let's do a real simple query in our Chinook database. And I think I'm going to use, and then the other thing too that we were talking about, that Mike was kind of talking about over here, is if you look in here, you see this DBO. That's a kind of a default schema when you create databases and tables. That means database owner. But you can create new schemas and mess around with that. But if you look in here, like Mike was talking about, these are different schemas. So this table album has 3 columns in it: album ID, title, and artist ID. And then this one has artist ID and name. Now, the artist ID can tie back to this album table because the artist ID is a key that is common to one another, and that's why it's called a relational database. So if I go back up here and I run a quick query, select from album, I'll put a no lock on there. And I just hit F5, I get a bunch of information back here, right? And if I do the same thing with artist, I'm not putting any conditions on here. Let me just run this one here. Then I get a bunch of data back there.
That's why the no lock.
Yep, exactly. So the reason why I put the no lock on there is because let's say Mike and I were using the exact same database and same tables. I can go out and query that table with a large data set, and he can do the same thing at the same time, and it doesn't slow his connection down, doesn't slow my connection down, and it doesn't keep him from accessing the same table that I'm accessing at the same time. So that's why you throw the no lock. It's a good habit to get into. Good habit to get
I learned
into.
something.
Hey, shoot, so what we're going to do, so we've got a database here, we've got tables, a couple of tables here. So let's go over to our Visual Studio, and we're going to create a new solution. What do I want to call? I'm going to call this Dapper Sol or something like that.
Now he said solution, but he's going to create a new project.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, when you create a new, and it's just going to be a console application. So when you create a new project, you can do this. You can create a solution and then throw projects into it. But if you create a project, it automatically creates a solution for you.
I'm excited because I already got one question for you. I'm going to see how you're going to do it.
The solution creation or
no, I sent you some stuff in the chat. I didn't want to, but
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna click next, and I'm making sure that I got C# up here. I'm making sure that I've got, all platforms, because this is a .NET Core application. So I'm click next. I'm doing this on the fly, Mike, so I ain't prepped for this. So,
No,
and I'm gonna call this Dapper.
this is the best way to do it
It is to me.
because people need to realize that this is kind of what we do for a living. Obviously, we don't create new projects every day,
Mm-hmm.
but you do it. You're like, oh, I shouldn't have did that. You go back and you start over. You fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think.
Now,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Now, what I'm doing here, let me go back here. This is what kind of Mike was talking about. So you have your new solution. I can create a new solution, or I can add to an existing solution. So you can create projects and throw them to an existing solution, or you can just create a new solution. And I'm going to uncheck this too, because I'm going to put the solution in the project in a different directory. And then on the next tab, this part is kind of important here. So Dapper works on a specific .NET framework. The most current framework right now is the .NET 5.0 framework, and that gives you the common runtime libraries and all of the stuff that you need to be able to run a .NET solution in the background, or run it at all. So anytime you see a video that I make, I always try to use the most current .NET framework that's out there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click create, and this will create just a bare bones basic console application. And then what we'll do is we'll use Nuget, which is a storehouse of different libraries online. We'll use Nuget to grab all of the libraries that we need to run a Dapper application. So while that's doing that in the background and it's building out all of my stuff for me, I'm going to come back over here to Dapper, because this is the package that we'll need to run to be able to install Dapper in our solution. And what I'll probably do as well is once we get to a kind of a good stopping point, is we'll push this up into a Git repository and GitHub. So I try and do that all the time. So let's see here. My .NET is acting slow because this computer is slow. Okay, there we go. So over here on the right hand side, you'll see all of our dependencies. These are all our frameworks. You can see we have our .NET Core, and these are all the different .NET libraries by default that I get because of the type of project and solution that I chose. So any of the classes and methods by design that are in here, I have access to. I can use them. I just have to create the right reference to them, and I can use them. Okay. So what we're going to do before we get too far down the road is we're going to go ahead. Oh, what I just did was I clicked this show all files. You do that, Mike? Because I do that all the time. I wish I had that on by default.
Yeah, I don't like seeing the files that I'm, the bin and OBJ or, yeah, it depends on what I'm doing, but I normally have it all. When there's too much stuff on the screen, I start getting,
you start wigging out.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do, so there's two ways to do this in Visual Studio. You can use the package manager console down here, and you can actually run this command that they have in there. But I'm going to show you the way that a lot of people like to do it.
Yeah, that's the way I do it, through the interface. I mean, the GUI.
Heck yeah, because you'll look in there, you'll see something, you're like, I want that too, right? It's like going to the store and window shopping.
Yeah,
right.
I do have some regrets sometimes not using the console, especially like with Git. I'm so used to using Git Kraken or something to do pushes. That when I'm pairing with somebody and they're like, just push it, they go to the console like, I don't do that.
I actually had a conversation with one of my coworkers. He's the guy I kind of talk to about this kind of stuff all the time, And I told him, I said, yeah, I'm trying to get much better with my command line get
Me
stuff.
too.
So
Yeah, I have to.
yeah. And so what we're kind of talking about here is we have over here, this is just a git bash, and so it uses Linux type commands. And so what I'm going to do eventually is when I get ready to push this up, this information down here in my Visual Studio, you'll see, and actually I should do that right away. So here, I'll just go ahead and do it real quick since we're on that topic. So let me go to my, the directory that I'm in here. So
I mean, you can wait because you want to show them Dapper, right? I mean, that's up to you.
I do.
Yeah.
But I think so. Like I don't know about you, but what I try to do is when I start working on the solution, I mean, you're going to start from the master anyway, so it doesn't matter. It only takes a few minutes, but yeah, we'll go ahead and start on Dapper. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up into Tools, come down here to Nuget Package Manager, and click Manage Nuget Packages for Solution. And this is like getting a catalog. You remember those old school department store catalogs that you get in the mail?
JCPenney's, yeah.
Heck yeah, Sears and stuff. You could scan through all of those, yeah, and big old thick catalog. And so
This is
is
what I
like
want for Christmas.
heck yeah. So this is kind of like that, right? And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna click Browse, and right away you see some of the more popular ones, like this JSON one is popular.
Very popular. I bet it's already installed.
No,
I'm surprised it's not. Yeah,
it's not. No, it's not. Yeah,
because it wouldn't be in Browse. Yeah.
Yeah. Castle Core is another one. Mock for testing. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and click Dapper. We'll look up Dapper, and there it is. And then what you do is you just click on this little checkbox here and say install, and it'll automatically install it for you. And then when you go over to installed, you'll see what's installed. And so when I come over here to the right, you'll see this new drop down says packages over here. If I click in there, we can see that we have Dapper, and here's the DLL for Dapper, which is just a library of Dapper methods and classes and stuff that we can inherit from and stuff. So, all right, so now what we're gonna do is we can kind of go to this getting started, and like I said, I'm always some people learn differently than others do. I like to go to any kind of tutorial that I can get my hands on, and so this is just a step-by-step tutorial. So we've gone, and this talks about an MVC app. Don't use an MVC app unless you want to hurt yourself. And so in this instance, we've gone through steps 1 and 2 basically. And so step 3 is we have a database. Now it's not going to match this database, but we have a database over here. And if you just highlight this album, and I'm going to hit Alt F1 right here, and it shows us the columns that we have in here. And it also will show us any keys.
Let me try that.
Yeah, you using SSMS?
Of course.
Yep, it'll work.
I might be using Cockroach DB in a minute, but let me try that. I never tried that before.
Yeah, I learned about that too a couple years ago.
Alt F1?
Yep, Alt F1.
It's funny you say that because my database is ChickenWingMcGee, but I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna change it to HotWingMcGee.
I
saw it
when I put the invite out there. I said ChickenWingMcGee.
I saw it. But I'm gonna change it to HotWingMcGee for marketing purposes.
So in this instance, we have over here information on our table in our database, right? And it talks about our artist ID is a key. We have our primary key is the album ID. We have a foreign key constraint here that references another table, which is probably this artist table. I look at artists. Did I do artists? Yeah, artists. So it ties all of it's just information that tells you how the database is tying these two tables together. Okay, so we've got a table that we can use. And now we're ready to create a data model. And usually what you try to do is create your data model with a name that's very that's similar to what you're going to use, right? And so what I usually do, and again, this is just he's
I'm hating on that.
he's hating on it.
Yeah.
Why you hate? Tell me why. Tell me why.
Hey, go back to their screen. I'll show you the first thing I don't like about it. That actual website. Customer. The column is customer ID. That column that property should be called ID.
ID.
You wouldn't go customer.customer ID, but they did that to match the schema. And so if that was the case, why is it not customer first name? But they match the schema.
Right.
But there's a fix. But wait. But there's a fix for that. But it doesn't. In this case, it doesn't matter because it matches.
Right. And again, this is kind of at a very high level.
Yeah.
When you want to get into more schema based development, then you probably do what Mike's talking about. When you're gonna get real, specific. And the reason why you do that is because if you have two tables with the same, I'll just do it real quick, just to kind of show you. So let's say, because if you're trying to get information from two tables in one query, you have to join the two tables together.
Yeah.
And so what you'll do is something like this. So I want to do that, and I'll do inner join album on album ID equals album ID. So therein lies your problem. And this is what Mike's kind of talking about. If I tried to do this, and I'm surprised that my IntelliSense isn't working on this.
Yeah, I'm surprised it doesn't want you to fully, like, that album ID should be artist ID, right?
Yeah. Yes, because like if you look, actually, let me use it.
I'm sorry, it should be artist that album that ID or
yeah. And so if I try to run this, and it works. I don't know why that's working.
It might be smart enough, but
well, probably because it's a foreign key constraint. I bet you if I tried to join another one of the tables together, then I'd start getting issues. So the reason why you do what Mike's talking about is because what happens is if you're trying to take two columns with the same name in two different tables, SQL will tell you, well, at least SSMS will bark about that and says you have an ambiguous ID. It doesn't know which table that you're referencing to which column and which table you're referencing. So to get around that in SQL, you use an alias. So let's say I say this is Al, and then this one is this is Art, and this one's Al with no lock, something like that, right? I forgot my no lock there, man. Okay, and so you would do that, and then in your IntelliSense, when you join, it will be there it goes, album ID, album ID, artist ID equals ART artist ID.
Yep.
And that,
Yep, I'm just curious.
Okay, yeah. So then what that does is it tells SQL, okay, I got two different tables with two same column names, but I know that in this table, I'm going to join on this table's ID there. So, and that's one way you could do it. You can do that with an alias. It gets kind of, the more complex the query, the more ugly that will look for you. So, so to get around that, you would do what Mike's talking about and further delineate how your table structure is with your column names and stuff like that. So then you don't have to worry about aliasing all the time. So, and I think the way that they built this, they kind of built this that way so that you kind of have to alias, I think. So that's just me. So we have to build a data model in our C# program. Now to do that, what I'm going to do to stay organized is I'm going to add a folder. I'm going to call it models or data models or just models. Okay. Then I'm going to right click on there and say add class. And I'm going to call this one, we're going to do the album class first, album. model. Let's just call it album model. All right. And then in this, I'm going to create properties which correspond with my artist table. So I have 3 columns in my artist table. I'm gonna do the same thing. And this part is very important, okay? Because this messes a lot of people up when they're starting to do this. In SQL Server Management Studio, there's multiple ways to find out the type of a column. You can do what I'm doing right here and look at the actual columns in this by navigating down into the table structure, or you can do the Alt F1 like I did here and look at it that way. What did it do? Artist. I meant to do album. There we go. I meant to do album. And so either way, what you want to pay attention is to this. The first thing you want to pay attention is to the type of data that you're pulling from the database. Do not get into the habit of pulling everything as one type of data and then translating it over in your application.
What do you mean? Like,
so for example, if you're pulling an integer, create a model over here where you have an integer.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, cast it the right way.
Yeah, you better, because you'll run into all kinds of problems.
Yeah, and then so
Yeah.
here's the one thing too, right? You run into this more when you're talking about consuming web services and APIs. Is that you especially JSON ones, because you get everything as string data basically, because that's all a JSON string is. But then what you can do, not getting too into depth of it, you can use data member attributes, look for the actual type, the actual data name in your JSON string, and then what you do is you just cast it the right way, because you're expecting to always get something back there, and then you can always nullify it if it's something that you can null, right? So the first thing you want to make sure is the type of data that you're looking at. So we have album ID. I'm using property.
This doesn't translate one for one anyway, because that next one's a invar char of 160. You don't even have that in C#.
No,
so that's going to be a string. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm glad you said that, Mike, because there is a cheat sheet too. Let's see, SQL Server.
You know, I guess I just take all this for granted because I've been doing it so long.
Mm-hmm.
I know ID is going to be an integer or a GUID. Really, the only 2 things they could ever be. Everything else is going to be a string, and maybe decimal if it's some number thing.
Yeah.
And then everything var char, in char, that's always going to be a string. I always just look at the columns in the left side and the solution, I guess, in the, not really a solution, the database explorer.
Right. So what Mike's talking about is this right here. And so what you have over here, this first column is your SQL Server database type. So like a big int in C# or in .NET is an N64, or what we call a long, right?
Yeah.
Because of the size of the number, you can, some things are universal to one another. Char is a string in .NET. In varchar, that kind of stuff, they're always strings in .NET, right? Or an array of chars to just say a string. Yeah. It's probably easier. Datetimes is where you get kind of tricky, right? Because you have small datetime, you have regular datetime, you have datetime 2, you have date. And so because of what they pass back to you, you have to be careful of which one that you use there, because I ran into this at my job one time where I was converting a small datetime to a datetime, might have been the other way around. And the small datetime only accepts up to a certain value of years. Yeah. So you have to be kind of careful. And so kind of pay attention to that.
I've got to the point where I choose datetime offset for everything now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it always comes back to bite me later because someone's in a different time zone.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, like, man, I should have made that off.
Yeah. And then the other thing too with that is there are location and locale settings in C# that you in .NET that you can use as well. Because if you think about it this way, your database can be set up, because what a lot of businesses do now is they offshore all of their data into another country. And so when they set up their database, their database is set up with a different locale, right? Let's say it's India. So they'll set it up with India. The time stamp is different because you're in a different time zone and all the other crazy stuff. So you have to basically take the location on the database and determine what data you're looking at. So it gets kind of tricky with that. So just kind of pay attention to when you're doing conversions on your data from your SQL servers. So then I'm going to use that. That one is an int. So we have two ints and a varchar and an inchar, right? So then here, I'm going to call this, what was that called, man? Album ID.
It was album ID.
Yep.
Which I don't like, but we'll deal with it.
Yep. And I'm going to give it the exact same case and everything else. Doesn't really matter at this point, but the next column is called title. That's a string. And then the last column here for this table is called artist ID. Okay. So now we have a model that matches our database here. Now, one thing to consider as well is the second part of this. Pay attention to when a field can be null or when a field can be not null. That part's important because if your ORM, your Dapper, is expecting a field to have a value and you put it as in the database is not null, you can throw a null reference exception error because you have data that can be null and you're expecting something that's going to have data in it. I'll do the artist one too. So let me save this one and I'll create an artist model here. Artist. And I'll do the same thing here. It's just got two columns. So int artist ID and then name. Ooh, not string. String. Yeah, I know, right? That's something. All right. So here's the important thing. Okay. There are types in C# that are automatically nullable. String is one of those types. So you can have a null or empty string. Both are valid in a string. Where you get into some hairy stuff is when you have numbers that can be null. I'm not sure if they've got any columns in here that are numbers that can be null. I think everything's either an invarchar or let me see here.
Yeah, that's always a tricky thing because null means something different to every. To the business, null might mean 0.
Yep.
But it really means to me nothing was ever entered in here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. The other part that you have to watch out for is for Boolean values as well. You can handle a lot of this stuff in C# automatically. So like here's an example of this employee schema where it has this reports to as an int that's nullable. So let's say that I had an int in here that was nullable. Let's say that was called reports to. Now this does not belong to this schema, so I'm not going to keep it in here. So let's say I'm ready to get information from my table, but I see that that's a nullable value. So to do that in C#, what you do is you just put a little question mark next to it, and that tells it, hey, this is an integer that can be null. And what that does is it exposes a multitude of different methods that you can use in C# to check to see if a value is null before you do anything with it. So that's just one way to do that as well. And then you can also do something like this where you do like an is null employee. So let's say I say is null something like that as reports to something like that. And so let's say I want to say where I'm doing it again, Mike.
Well, just like put the reports to and make a alias for that is null.
Hold on here. Report to is null.
That'll work too.
Yeah. So there's at least one column in there that has a null value. It's probably the first one.
So try this. Like you see, like go after the select.
Mm-hmm.
Like after your select, just and put reports to there. I mean, like right before your is null.
Oh,
as another column.
As a column, yeah.
Yeah. And then put the comma, and then just run that. You don't even need to where. I just want to show that. See, that's null, but he changed it to 0.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one way on the database side where you can do some error handling and stuff to make sure that, because you can conditionalize on a 0 on a, you can conditionalize on a nullable value too, but it does it, you have to look at how your your system's working, right? How your query is working.
Yeah. That's a business decision. It's like, what does that really mean?
Exactly.
That means that person reports no one. That's the CEO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably. Yeah. So now we've got 2 different classes or models that we can get data into. So now we're on the next step for Dapper, which is to create a controller, but we're not going to, excuse me, we're not going to create a controller in this one. So what you can do is, and I have to do this all the time, Dapper, C#, console, application, let's say app. Excuse me. All right, so here's another one. Let's get some props to whoever wrote this article. So the next thing you need to do is you need to create a database connection between your C# application and your database. Now, probably the easiest way to do that, well, you have to find out what the connection string is. Now, I'm going to just say this right off the bat because I know Mike going to say something about it here in a minute. So this is a training video, and this is a test database.
Yeah.
This has no business logic in it. I really don't care right now about exposing the connection string to you all.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Well,
that's
I was waiting for you to.
Yeah,
but it's a good point, because you never want to expose a connection string to a database because you're just giving somebody the keys to all of your stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So when you code it, make sure that you don't expose your connection string to, and you'll see examples where they have that. And I think that's part of the challenge in teaching this stuff, is that you want people to be able to run this, but you can't not show them how to establish a connection to the database.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's got to realize anytime anyone's showing you a video like this where they're showing you something, even these instructions that they're showing you are, you would never do this in production.
Right, exactly.
Matter of fact, we would never create a console app and have a reference to Dapper. It would be in another project, which would be the data. So there's, this is just to show you how to do it quickly, but quickly. And then you got to, I can show you how to build a car with a cardboard box and 4 wheels, but you got to do the work.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So we're going to create a database connection between our database. Now, I think I've already got one over here. Let's see here. I need to go to Server Explorer instead, actually. All right, so here's my SQL server over here. And you can tell I had some data connections here. I think this one still works. Yep. So what you do, actually, I'll just go ahead and delete this one right here so I can show you how to do it. So let's just delete this right here. Say, yep. Okay, so what you do is you right click on this, you say add connection. And you have to know your server name. It just happens to be the server name of my desktop here.
Localhost.
Yep. BBHMUF. And I'm going to use Windows authentication. And when I click down here, I can see that I've got all of those databases in that SQL server. And I can say test connection. If you see that, you're connected. And just say, okay. Now, to get to the connection string that you need, navigate down to the tables or table that you're going to be messing around with. And actually, I think it's right here, actually, just the database. And you can actually query your table in Visual Studio as well. So, so what you do is you click on the database, and over here on the right-hand side, you see this connection string right here. And that
I've
is
never
your
done
key.
it that way. That's
Oh,
interesting.
really?
Yeah, I mean, I always just type it in,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
that's probably better.
Yeah, it's a real easy way to find it.
It's just like,
Well,
yeah,
I'm like
yeah,
you. I'm so used to doing it a different way, right?
yeah.
So what you do is you have your connection string. So you're going to save that off. So I'm just going to save that off right here in a little comment line because we're going to need it later. This is our connection string. All right. So the next step we need to do is we're just going to copy this code here, and then what we'll do is we will kind of go back and tell you what we kind of did here. So let me go in here, and I'm actually going to create a different method for this. Static way to get connect, something like that. And I'm just going to paste that in there and take that main out of there. All right. Now we see the little red squiggly lines. Let me do this to clean up my stuff here. We see the little red squiggly lines here. Now in Visual Studio, if you hover over that, you have this little nifty show potential fixes, hit Alt Enter or Control period. I'm going to hit Alt Enter, and it'll tell me what I need to do. And it says generate class, blah, blah, blah. So it does, yeah, there's nothing there, right? I know just from experience that there's another series of Nuget packages that I need to look for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you're going to come up here to tools like we did before.
You need Microsoft Data.sql.
Yeah, I think so. It's Microsoft. Oh, come over to browse. And it's Microsoft Data SQL client.
Yep, that's it.
And just say, click that, install. Now, the one thing about these Nuget packages is they try to take all of the guesswork out of it. I think 9 times out of 10 it works that way, but sometimes it doesn't. So what they're doing is when you download this one Nuget package, if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see all of these different types that are used in that Nuget package. And then down here, you'll also see any dependencies that this Nuget package is using. If you download this one main Nuget package, it should download everything that you need. So you don't have to go out and guess what you need. So I'm going to go ahead and click install. And that's going to go through and install some stuff for me. So right now it's communicating with Nuget.org. It's doing all its magic. And you'll say accept. Now we see we got a couple of errors here that were there before. Now if I hover over this and hit my Alt Enter, it should bring up something that says using Microsoft's data, Microsoft.data.sql client. If I click on that, those squigglies will go away. And you'll see up here at the top of your screen, you'll see a using up there. So now all I'm doing is I'm referencing the Microsoft.data.sql client namespace, and I'm using the SQL connection class inside of that namespace. And I can use all of the methods that are in there. I'm basically instantiating a new object of the SQL connection class. Okay. So now, per that little help page that we had, we can actually do some Dapper stuff here. So let's go to the next part of our training material here, and we can actually do a query. So I'm going to copy these 3 lines here, and we're going to do some changing here though. So if we hover over this, we see that we've got another red squiggly. The reason why we have another red squiggly is because we need to reference Dapper up here. So I'm just going to come up here and say using Dapper. And that should go away.
It's an extension, yeah.
Yep. So now what we can do is this query first. This method will get the first row of data that would, correspond in the table that they gave us. I'm going to use a different one. I'm going to call it query, right? Our query, and I'm going to say equals connection dot query. And then I want to get back a
list of albums.
Yeah, a list of albums. So let's say album model. And then there's another red squiggly. So I'll enter and it'll add me a reference to my models. And then in here, what I can do is I can create a Sql command. So let's check me up here. Blah, 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 blah. Yes. I think you said that earlier, huh? Okay, so before I get too far down the road here.
I think your album models might be not public. Is that what it is?
Yeah, no, I have to create a SQL string here. So if I do something like
that
this.
What it's complaining about?
Yeah. If I come over here and if I say SQL. There we go. Now this may or may not work right off the bat. I usually don't do it this way, but okay. So what you can do in this instance is we should now be able to build a query to our album model. So what I like to do is, just to kind of get this out of here, is I'm going to select one column from this this album table. Just make a query. And then we're gonna get that back and no lock. Now, one thing I will talk about here. Oh, let me put my connection string in there too. Otherwise, it's going to be a real short trip. So here's our connection string here. That. There we go. And then what we need to do is we need to. Now there's different ways to do this, right? If you're passing in parameters into Dapper, you have to parameterize your query. And the reason why you want to do that is because parameterizing your query will prevent from, it helps prevent from SQL injection. What's SQL injection? Mike, you want to tell them what SQL injection is?
I could inject my own SQL in to change your database. So if you don't parameterize it, I could say update something. I could pass in another string like update my salary to be $1 million, which it should be, and some other query. But if you parameterize it, you can't do that.
Right. So so what we're kind of talking about is SQL injection is if not the number one way that big places like banks and credit card companies and stuff like that get hacked. They have a web page that interacts with the table somewhere in the database. And some black hat hacker will go out there and attack that database with SQL injection by trying to change a bunch of queries. They'll start out real easy first, right? They'll see if they can they'll see if they can make a simple query, right? A list of tables or something like that. And once they find out they can do that, then they start breaking down how the table structure of your database is. And then they can change stuff in there. They can get, private information. They can get information that is secure. And so SQL injection is one of the number one ways that companies get popped up when it comes to the data. And so if you Google any story out there, it may not say SQL injection, but like, for example, I know like a few years ago, there was a Home Depot got hit with a bunch of customer data getting exposed on the internet. That's how that information got exposed. They got hit with a SQL injection attack. So parameterizing your query means that if you're passing information from a web page or a user interface into your query to get results back, you take those and you put them in parameters, which will lock down what a person can put in there. So if you know that you're only expecting to get a number back, make a parameter that only accepts a number and pass it into your query, and then you won't be able, and people won't be able to, inject string stuff into your SQL. So I'm going to take that query that I had here. I'm going to paste it in there. Let me comment this out here and say query. I don't think that's going to work, actually. I'm just going to put a breakpoint there, Mike. Let's see here. And then what we need to do is we need to call our DB connection method. DB connection. And then let me come up here actually and do a little bit of debugging here. All right, let me build it. And I'm not taking the time out right now to make a test solution, but you should to test your stuff, to unit test your stuff.
He knew he was waiting for me to say something, but
I sure was.
I was tempering it. I realized this is just because we definitely, everyone does things different.
Mm-hmm. You should never really code a solution and then build the test cases. It should be the other way around. I mean, some people do. I've done that before.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I compromise on. I don't care how you do it. Just make sure that there's tests. It's better. It's better to do it up front, because then the code gets written in a way for tests. But it's not a hill I'm ready to die on yet.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and start this up.
I might have to show you some of my stuff, but mine's got warts all in it.
Oh,
yeah.
Hey, man,
yeah, because I'm doing something slightly different here.
Okay.
Because I'm gathering a lot of data at once. And so I've got a store proc that gathers all the data.
Right.
And of course, I'm getting 5 result sets back.
Did I var that? I did. Okay. So eventually, if our stuff works the right way, and it's just taking a while because this is the first time I debugged this. There we go.
Really? Yeah, that was slow. Okay.
Yeah, it was. Well, this is not my primary computer, so so I'm gonna hit F10. F10 here. And now I've got a connection with my database. And what you can do is you can hover over this connection right here. And you can see, if you drill down in here, I've got a database. Here's my connection string.
What's
the database that I'm hooked up into. Go down the state right there. It's closed.
It's closed, so that's not.
Yeah, I have to open up the connection. I think that's what I'm missing here.
No.
Hold on here. Yep, hold on. Let me do that. There we go. Now I'll run. It should run faster this time around. Bam. There we go. And there we go. So now if I come back here, go down the state, it's open. So now we're ready to go. So now I should be able to query this and hit F10. And if I hover over query and I come in here,
there it is. For those about to rock, we salute you.
Yep.
Now I can appreciate this because I know the other way. I know the 2 other ways of doing it. To me, this is the best of both worlds. I don't like entity frameworks, so then I would use ADO.NET. But now I've got to map all this. This maps it for me and gives me the speed, and I don't have to have any framework. So that's why I'm a fan of Dapper right now. You've turned me to the way from the dark. Yeah, I'm like you're like Luke Skywalker. You saved me from the dark side.
You still got one metal hand, but you all good though
Yeah,
with it. You
yeah.
all good with it. So now why is this part important to us? Well, like Mike just said, the database and Dapper did all the work for me. I don't have to go out there and write a query to go get each piece of this data. It's all in a collection for me right now. So now all I have to do, let's say I wanted to write each line of this out to my my console. So what I can do now, and actually I can come up here and I'm going to use link as well. Using system.link. I love link. To list. All right. And for some odd reason, that should be yellow. Oh, there it goes. And so now what's going to happen is I can do a for each on that. For each var data in query. Query. And now I can reference each individual column in the collection of models. So what I can do is I can come down here and I can say console right line, and I can say, and actually let me do it this way instead. I'm just going to do a real quick string format. Var out string equals we'll do it this way using interpolation.
What do you want to show? All of them?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
not all of them. I'm just grabbing pieces of it because I know there's information in that we just don't need. So like, for example, let's say I just want the title, data.title, like that. And then I just say, and actually I can just do that. I can just say console write line, because you can pass in a string into that. And then come down here. I'll get rid of that read line there, or that write line there. Actually, let me put a press any key to continue. The blank line there. And now all I need to do, I'm gonna take the breakpoint off of there.
Just let it run.
Yep, and just let it run.
Because that's gonna break on 42. There you go.
It is.
Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of show them how this using works as well.
Oh, to dispose it?
Yep. So it's important to for data collection and for memory purposes that when you are utilizing a database connection or an API connection, that you dispose of it properly, because if not, it'll eat up your memory and it'll mess up, I'm kind of being high level with this. What would you think? How would you explain
this is always a tough one, because you only have so many connection pools.
Yeah.
And so you want to close them connections, but opening connections can be expensive too. I always use a using statement that will dispose of it.
And I think the cool thing about it is, I think this is something that came about a few years, like 6-7 years ago, that you could use using. They said start using the using statement because it automatically disposes of the connection for you. Because you used to have to come up here, open the connection, then you have to close the connection yourself and then dispose of it properly. Now the using just does it for you and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, it's been that way for a bit. But you always, this is one of those things you don't really realize till you start tying to an API and you've got 10 different things going. Then you realize, crap, I'm chewing up memory, but for this, you're not going to chew up.
Right. Yep. So someone hit F5. And so if I come back over here, if I come back over to my console, I just made a mess up there. Here's all of the data, or these are all of the titles of the albums that are in there.
You know what I'd like to do now that we've done this? I'd like to make well, not today, but another video. And I think, I don't know if people can appreciate what you're doing because they don't know the other way to do it. Right.
Right.
Like if I had to show you how we used to have to do this, you would be like, like, well, that sucks. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if I showed you Entity Framework in this situation, you'd be, well, Entity Framework is great too, but this is something simple. Once you start getting relationships, then you'll see why Entity Framework comes back to bite you and you start pulling your hair out if you have any.
Right. Yeah. Entity Framework, like I said, it's really good for stuff like this.
Yeah.
Something real simple. And I'm sure there's plenty of Microsoft, senior devs out there and folks they'll say, you guys don't know what you're talking about, kind of a thing, right? But every ORM has drawbacks and it has its faults. The reason why I like Dapper is because we did this in 57 minutes, right? Give or take.
And we could have did it in 5.
Yep. And it's just real simple to use, right? And so and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do this kind of stuff, right?
Well, wait a minute. I mean, yeah, it does, because I need to keep my salary high. Takes a senior software engineer to do this.
Yeah, I'll say it takes a senior software engineer. I won't take rocket science. Let me not do it. So if I hit enter here, there we go. It should stop my my solution there.
You've inspired me to now. I'm not going to do it tonight, but I'll do a little video where I show what I'm doing, because I'm doing something. Well, I guess I could show you, but can I just have 3 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
let me share your screen.
Yeah, share the screen. Yeah.
Yeah. Here,
I'll show you why mine's slightly. Now you're going to see some ugliness because I'm in the middle of it. But
yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, share screen. Okay, so I'm a. What do you see?
I see your SSMS there.
Okay, and so what I've got is a store proc. So let's go down to store procedures. There should be a get business here, and if we modify this, you see I'm getting the business. I'm getting the business address. I'm getting the menus. This is for my ChickenWingMcGee thing, right? So I'm getting the business, which is Tanner's or some bar or whatever. And then I'm getting their addresses, because a bar could have several addresses. And then I'm getting their menu, and a menu has a meal. So a menu could have hamburgers or chicken wings, right? And so in this case, I'm getting their menu, and then I'm getting the meals and their menu. And if we run this, you can see that I'm getting several things back at once. So there's for Tanner's, and this is fake data. So this is, and so there's Tanner's. They're on this any street. Here's their menu. Here's a location to their menu, so you can click it on the website to get to it. Here's their menu, and here's chicken wings, and here's all the flavors that they have: lemon pepper, buffalo, barbecue, honey mustard, and that type of thing. Right
now, kind of explaining what a store proc is. Open that back up. Yeah, there you go. So a store proc is basically a way to run a series of SQL queries to get back one data set all at one time. It's just so what you do is you create all of your individual queries and you throw them in this store proc, and then what a lot of people do is they'll create a temporary table in the store procedure, fill up that temporary table in their store procedure, and then return the store procedure as a data set.
Yeah, you could do that. Now, the reason why I did this is because I could have done Dapper and did 5 different selects, right? But this database could be in India. So every time I do that, I've got to go round trip back to India. So I'm trying to go to India once and grab it and bring it all back once. There's plus or minuses that it depends on, a lot of things, but for my website, I'm showing all this at once. Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if my code. So here's some dreaded tests that I know you hate. But
no, I don't hate code. I don't hate testing. I don't hate testing now.
So let's go to my thing, right? Let's go to my domain manager, because this is how I kind of set mine up. So I should have a get business here, right? And you can see so this is Dapper, but it's a plugin, and you see where it says, I'm gonna see if I can make this. I don't know if that's too small.
No, I can see it just fine. Yeah, if you want to make it bigger, just
okay.
Yeah, you go. Yeah, yep, it's better.
Okay, so you see how there's another thing called query multiples, and I'm saying get business. I'm calling that stored proc. I'm passing in. This is a parameter, so I don't have to worry about SQL injection. The business ID, that's the ID to that stored proc, right?
Right.
And you see, I'm saying call a stored proc. And then what you can do is you can say business, grid reader, read, and business. And I don't have to do any of the select. It just knows that that's mapped to business.
Right.
Yeah. So that's how I do it. Then as business equals null, I go and get the address list. And so I read, which read means go to the next result set. Right. And so that's really this. Let's do this again. So you can see the result sets here. There's the business. This is several result sets. Here's the business result set. Here's the address. Here's the menu ID, then all the flavors that are on their menu.
So you're doing this in lieu of a join instead.
Yeah, because I could have, I mean, there are joins in here, but I could have never joined all this data and got it all this way.
Right.
Yeah. Or it would have been a wicked crazy join. I would have got more rows than I've ever wanted, right? And so I'm saying, give me the business address, give me the menu, I'll have to explain this, but this kind of pained me. Now, this is the reason why this is because a menu and a menu meal, which is a meal that's on a menu, the schema and the data and the entities look different. So I had to create a DTO that just has the database things on it to actually populate, because that menu meal actually has some other stuff on it. We won't get into that, but you can see I'm going through that, and that's how this is a plugin for Dapper, extension for Dapper, or another Nuget package that I'm using. So I never ever have to do something like select business ID from, and all, because my issue is as I'm making this, I'm probably going to come to this business object here, which is right here. And I'm probably going to be adding more fields as I develop this website, right? I don't want to have to go change the query. All I do is go change the store proc in this object
model,
and it just magically knows. If I was doing ADO.NET, I'd have to map everything. Entity framework could figure it out, but Entity framework would be complaining about me having this list of business addresses here. I'd have to go do a bunch of DB context and tell it that it's a parent. I don't want to do all that, And so that's my version of it. I say we make another video later.
I think so, yeah.
But and we try to make it less than 10 minutes because people have short attention spans. And you need to show them really quick and get them out. Then show them some more detailed stuff.
Right. Yeah. Because this Dapper has so many different uses. I've never really, to be honest, I've never used it the way you're using it. I'd be curious. Do you have that GitHub repository that
Yeah, I do.
I know I don't have the database, but
I
just like to look at the code.
Yeah, I can send this to you.
Okay.
I'll just remove my connection string so you don't.
So I don't hack into your stuff.
Hacking into my stuff, but it's local. You won't be able to get to it.
Yep.
But eventually, this will be in an Azure database. I want to spin up an Azure SQL Server database. Unfortunately, that's expensive. Not expensive, but it starts to get expensive because they'll give it to me free. But it's hard to manage that. If you start getting a bunch of queries, they'll shut your database down because you go over your spending limit.
Yeah, they have that pay as you go in it. I think the one I had that 1 month was like $50, and it was just me.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It gets expensive.
Yeah, I can for $50 a month. I can get hosting with free SQL Server.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
There's a reason for that. I'm not looking to have to scale. I'll put some caching in. I'm not going to scale. This is just going to be for Omaha chicken wings. And if it works, I'll do Chicago chicken wings later.
There you go. Yeah. So basically, we showed you all how to stand up a very quick Dapper solution, very bare bones basic. Mike kind of showed you a little bit more complex version of that. And can you go back to your code real quick, Mike, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
So there's some basic things I want people to understand about this. No matter how you do this, both the way that I did it and the way that Mike did it. If you look over on the right, open your domain back up.
Oh, my business domain. Oh,
yeah.
You mean, okay.
Go to your models.
Okay, these are my models here.
Yep. And so go to your business models, your classes.
Well, here's these. I don't put model on. This is business. It maps right to the table.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
This I have one project. All this project has domains in it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So basically, he's doing the exact same thing that I'm doing. He's just using a different method of it.
Yeah.
But the bare bones basic thing that you have to understand in this process, no matter how you do it, if you do it the way that Mike's doing it or you do it that I did it, is you have a table.
Yep.
You have an application. Your
Yep.
application needs to be able to read the data from your table, and you have to have a connection between the two.
Yeah, and we could see the same thing you did here.
Yep.
Here's my I just called it domain manager.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my connection string.
Yep.
I'm passing it in, and here's this is where I'm doing some mapping, but that's that's another
that Fluent Mapper. That's that Dapper extension from Nuget.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so you see, I'm opening the connection just like you are. It's just I'm doing a little bit more complex stuff, and they are too. As you get into this, you're going to do some more complex stuff.
Right. Yeah. And so, but I wanted everybody to understand that the concept is the same.
Yeah, it's the
right. Same. The end goal is still the same thing. Mike is trying to get data and display it somewhere to somebody. The one that we did real quickly is just getting data from somewhere and displaying it to somebody, whether it be in a console application or on a web page. Excuse me, the concept is still the same, right? Yeah. The process is still the same. The code in between is going to be based on the business logic that you're using, but the procedures are still going to be the same, right? Whether you use a store proc or you use individual queries, it doesn't matter. You're still going to write something to return data to your application, and you're going to use the ORM to split it out and to parse out into objects for you and then do something with it. So that's the gist of what we're going to kind of talk about today. As always, I enjoy talking with Mike. We
have some very we have some very interesting conversations.
Yeah, we do. And it was really funny because like I said, I was sharing some information that he was putting out on the Facebook page. And you know what, we might talk a little bit more in the future. Might get Fred on here the next time too, along with you and I, to talk a little bit more, because I know he's more on the integration database side too.
Yeah,
right?
He would be our cloud guy. Are we talking about Fred Peoples?
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to talk to him because I'm not a cloud guy, so I do want to put all this in the cloud, which is just a fancy word for server, but it's the ability to scale and spin up services quickly.
Right.
I'm actually gonna Dockerize this if I can, because I need to learn Docker for my current job. So,
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. I have an API that I'm gonna have to put into Docker eventually too. So I need to learn that as well.
Yeah.
And I know a guy who just did this at work. So we can also show him how to test APIs with Postman. So there's a multitude of different things that we can do.
I all love Postman. I'm sure I have it. There it is.
I do too. Yeah. I do too. So so what we can do is we'll kind of talk, with some other folks here, me, Mike, Fred, and others that want to get involved in this. This will definitely not be the last time we do this. But as always, like, share, comment, subscribe to this video. Go out, check out Code Black, our guy, Mr. Dave P. He's running things over there. He's hustling. He's doing everything he's supposed to be doing. Great guy, great group of people. And as always, God bless. Hope you find this. As I always say, I'm not the end all be all. I'm not the end all be all, but I love to talk about this, and I'm always Mike says don't use Unity framework. so as always, enjoyed talking with you as always, Mike. We had a great time, and hopefully somebody learned something, and we'll stream live again soon, hopefully. I'll holler at you, Mike, later. Yeah, and we'll get together and maybe get with Fred and do some more collab stuff. So all right.
Talk to y'all later.
Everyone. Take care.
Don't forget to subscribe, everyone.
Yes.